here at the University of, so we're recording the meeting. I'm an assistant director of admissions here at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. I'm really excited to be with you guys virtually today. We have 81 participants on the call, so this is a fantastic group. Obviously, I wish I could be with you in person today, but very grateful that we have the technology to make it possible to do a presentation virtually. And I'll tell you guys a little bit more about myself, but before I do that, I want to introduce Megan Cross, one of our current UMass Amherst students and a tour guide in our office who is going to join me for the presentation today to offer the student perspective. So Megan, can you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you study, and why did you choose UMass Amherst?
Yeah, my favorite question. So hello, everyone. My name is Megan. I'm a rising senior at UMass. So I'm from Simsbury, Connecticut, which is about 20 minutes south of Massachusetts border and about 20 minutes north of Hartford. I'm studying operations and information management in the Eisenberg School of Management, and I have a certificate in data analytics as well. So as far as, why I chose UMass, there's a lot of reasons. It's a funny story, actually, because at first, it wasn't really on my radar. Kind of my mom went there, so I was like, oh, I'll humor her, go check it out. But when I first toured, I was like, oh gosh, this tour guide is so nice. And all the people that I've come into contact with have always been smiling at me, just has a really good feel on campus. And then I got admitted to the business school and the honor program. I'm in the Commonwealth Honors College as well. And, just did a little bit more research about all the opportunities that UMass has, and it's truly endless. I always say it's kind of a perk of going to a larger university is that there's not only tons of academic opportunities, but also so many extracurricular opportunities. So, a big reason was opportunities. Also, Amherst is just an incredible area. You might think of Western Massachusetts, not much to do, but Amherst is ranked as the #1 college town in the nation. So definitely holds true to that. And there's just tons to do there as well. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. Yeah, I always like to say that the theme of UMass Amherst is options, and that's something that you're going to see throughout the presentation today. So I just want to tell you a little bit more about myself and my UMass Amherst story. You can see I've got my UMass gear on today. I am also a UMass Amherst alum, so I graduated in 2012 with a degree in communication and a minor in Spanish. Both of my parents went to UMass Amherst, and like Megan, I was like, I wasn't sure if it would be the school for me, but I knew that, we have such a great school here as our flagship university in Massachusetts. I thought I would be silly not to check it out. And then when I came and toured campus, I really just had that exact same feeling that she talked about. People were so excited to be there. There's so much school pride and school spirit and this great sense of community and sense of opportunity, and just knowing that the possibilities were, as she said, endless in terms of academics, social life, things like study abroad. And we're going to go through a lot of the different opportunities that you have as a student at UMass Amherst, but definitely know that no matter who you are or what you're interested in, you'll find your place at UMass, and that there's really something for everybody. No two people at UMass Amherst are going to have exactly the same experience, and that's the beauty of a school like ours. So I work in the admissions office now. Obviously I loved my time at UMass Amherst so much that I came back to work here and tell you guys what a great school it is. I'm very proud to represent my alma mater, and I am the rep for Brookline High School. So I look forward to working with many of you through the summer and into next year, all the way through, and hopefully enrollment at UMass Amherst for many of you. So I'm going to be putting my email address in the chat in just a moment. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'm also going to put our tours at umass.edu email address where you can reach any of our tour guides. And Megan, if you'd like to, you can pop your email in there as well. So you are welcome to ask questions in the chat throughout the presentation. If it's something that Megan and I can easily answer on the fly or kind of incorporate into our conversation, I will do that. We'll also leave some time for Q&A towards the end of the session, facilitated by Mr. Lobenzin. And then if you don't have time to get your question answered, or if it's something that's really more like individual or specific, again, please feel free to reach out to us in the future. So I'm just going to take a quick second to put my email address in the chat there. and we still have people joining us, so thank you so much for coming. Really great crowd again, and just love the technology allowing us to be together. So before I actually jump into showing you a video about UMass Amherst, I wanted to start just kind of acknowledging the current events and the cultural moment that we're having around combating racism in our society, which of course infiltrates all levels of society, including higher ed. It goes beyond, of course, just is an individual a racist person? Unfortunately, racism is built into the fabric of the society. And so when we're seeing these things come to light, I know that it's important for students to be thinking about, is the university that I'm considering attending paying attention to these issues, and what are they going to do to be part of positive change in combating racism? So I just threw these slides together. They're not part of the official presentation, but I felt like it was really important to acknowledge this and to acknowledge that UMass believes and knows unequivocally that Black Lives Matter. And so this is from an email that was sent out to us by Dr. Nefertiti Walker, who is our Director of Diversity here on campus, laying out some of the things that UMass Amherst as an institution is continuing to do and will be doing in the future to focus on creating an anti-racist environment at UMass, including respectful workplace training series for everybody, a critical incident team, campus academy initiative for our police department, data-driven climate assessments, creation of a diversity, equity, and inclusion leadership council and student council, allowing for student voices to be heard in this conversation, and creating a task force for anti-racism that will include students, faculty, staff, administrators, all kinds of voices from campus. And each major business unit, like enrollment management, has been tasked with setting goals related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And there is a website up there as well that you can see a little bit more, including our statement combating racism and condemning racism, as well as some of our, tangible plans moving forward. And then I also just wanted to touch a little bit on, we are a predominantly white institution. So I think it's really valuable for students of color to hear a little bit about what the student body is made up, how the makeup is, what kind of resources there are to support students of color at a PWI, or predominantly white institution. So you can see here on the bottom of the slide a little bit of a few statistics about our student body makeup. We are going to talk about this more about the student body later, including the number, but it's around 24,000 undergraduate students at UMass Amherst. Of that, we're around 71% white and 29% students of color. So of that 100%, 15% identify as Black, Latinx, or Indigenous. We have 21% of our students that identify as first generation to college. So typically that definition would be the first in their family to complete or pursue a 4-year degree in the United States. And 7% of our students are international. So up on the top part of the slide, you can see some of our resources. If this is of interest to you, you might want to take a quick screenshot or a picture, or write some of these down, because you can find out a lot more about them on our website. The CMAS, which is our Center for Multicultural Advancement and Student Success, which has programmings, classes, events, workshops, and 4 different cultural centers on campus. We also have our Stonewall Center, which is our Center for LGBTQIA+ students and allies. Also resources, support services, a great place to hang out, and then programming. We have living communities that are based on race and ethnicity, gender identity, or membership in the LGBTQIA+ community. And then we do have our first generation at UMass program as part of student success, and Hillel at UMass Amherst, as well as a lot of other affinity groups. So again, no matter your background or your identity, just know that you will be supported and find community at UMass Amherst. So I just wanted to, acknowledge where we are at in history and talk a little bit about what that means at UMass Amherst. So with that, I'm going to show a great video. This is from our Be Revolutionary campaign, talking about, how our students are leaders, creators, innovators. I hope that as you see this video, you really do kind of get that sense of like possibility and excitement that Megan and I were talking about. So without further ado, here we go.
We are the revolutionaries of today.
Not waiting for change,
but creating it. By asking questions and questioning answers.
because our calling
is a better tomorrow. At the University of Massachusetts Amherst,
a revolutionary spirit runs through our veins.
It inspires us
to think in new ways,
to challenge convention,
not to simply be different,
but to actually make a difference.
In Massachusetts, the place where it all began.
By looking into space, thinking there must be more.
And then going out and proving it.
Where we don't see obstacles,
but opportunities. That's what revolutionaries do.
We embrace the freedom to dream bigger,
to dig deeper, and to never back down from the impossible.
Our future is in our very own hands.
We are pioneers,
builders,
unconventional doers,
committed to the relentless pursuit of progress. Be revolutionary.
We are the University of Massachusetts Amherst.
I never get sick of watching that video, and I always think it's such a nice way to kind of start out our conversation about what UMass Amherst is all about. I also just realized that I think I might have put I'm not sure if everyone can see my email address because it said everyone in waiting room. Megan, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see my email in the chat? Okay, cool. It's all set then. Awesome. And I'm gonna keep going. So let's see. So let's talk about UMass. What's it all about and what does it have to offer you as a prospective student? I'm gonna just kind of go clockwise around this slide, highlighting some different facts and figures and things that we love about our school. And then I'm gonna invite Megan to share a little bit about her experience in some of these areas. So she already mentioned that we are located in Amherst, Massachusetts, one of the best college towns in the entire country. It is about an hour and a half from Brookline, of course, as we all know, depending on the traffic on a good day, but you know, very kind of easy drive or Peter Pan bus ride away from home. The Peter Pan bus will take you guys right to South Station if that's easy for you. And that makes it, I think it's a nice distance away from home for you guys where you have the chance to explore a new area and, you know, kind of have that independence and that first step out of, you know, the family home. But at the same time, it's close enough where, like I said, it's just a quick drive or bus ride away. You can easily go home for a weekend or even just to see a friend for dinner. You know, you don't have to worry about an Amtrak ticket or a plane ticket or, you know, taking a whole day to get to and from campus. It's a pretty convenient ride. We are mostly in-state. We have around 70% in-state and 30% out-of-state students. So there will certainly be others from your high school and from the greater Boston area. But like I said earlier, we have also around 7% international students. So you're literally going to be meeting people from all over the country and all over the world. It's an amazing community here on campus. Looking at that next section of the slide, you can see there we have over 100 undergraduate degree programs. So it's also very common for students at UMass Amherst to do a double major, major and a minor like I did, or pursue a certificate or something like that, a study abroad experience to complement their regular undergraduate program. So as you're going to see on the next slide, all of our degree programs are divided into different schools and colleges. That's really just an organizing system. So you're not limited just to studying your major. You're going to be taking classes in all areas and with people from all different academic areas and learning from each other and community. And then as if we didn't have enough to offer right here on our campus with the 100 plus majors that we have, you also have access to the classes and resources at the 4 other colleges in the 5 college consortium. So the consortium consists of us and 4 other local colleges in Western Massachusetts: Amherst College, which is of course right downtown, just 5 minutes away from our campus, Smith College, Mount Holyoke College, and Hampshire College. So all of those schools are within 30 minutes of each other. And as a student at any of the schools, you have the opportunity to take classes for free at any of the other institutions, up to 2 classes a semester. So that's really cool, especially for you guys as in-state students. You're paying for the cost of an in-state public school, but you have access to classes and resources at these small private liberal arts schools as well. And of course, just due to the difference in the kind of school and the vibe and the size, you're really going to experience something different if you choose to take a free class through the consortium. It's also really valuable to those school students because they can come to UMass and take a class in a program that might not be offered at their school. And then we also even have a build your own major program. So pretty much if you can imagine it, you can major in it at UMass Amherst. As I mentioned earlier, we do have around 23,000 undergraduate students. We also have about 6,000 graduate students on campus, as well as thousands of faculty and staff. So I like to say that we're sort of like our own little city, but it's mostly made up of all people your age. So that is a really cool experience to be part of that community. And it really just lends itself to feeling very diverse and very open. You know, people here have a really kind of laid back attitude. It's very much like live and let live. We're just happy to be here. There's not really like a certain image that you need to uphold, or not just one type of student who's attracted to UMass. And because of the size, again, you know, you're going to find people that you connect with. The next thing I want to highlight is our dining. We always have to hype up UMass dining because we are rated #1 campus dining in the country for the 4th year in a row, and we love to brag about our food. It's really good. You have lots of different options. There are several different dining halls all around campus, and they all have really good food that's very fresh, that's always changing. You know, you're going to have lots of different options as to what you eat on a daily basis, and then it's going to a lot of times be affected by season, so it's going to be local food. So you can always get something good to eat at pretty much any time of the day. As soon as campus is open for visitors, if you haven't come visit us yet, I definitely suggest that you do, and make sure that you get a bite to eat while you're here at our UMass dining that we're so proud of. In terms of options and opportunities, again, you can see here, and Megan referred to earlier, tons of student organizations and clubs that you can be a part of. You know, everything from affinity groups like the Black Student Union to academic groups like the Accounting Club, to sports, you know, Women's Ultimate Frisbee, intramural soccer. There's all kinds of performing groups like the UMass Amherst Theater Guild, and a couple different a cappella groups, or our Shaw House Storytellers groups, dance groups, comedy, you know, pretty much everything you can think of. I'm going to put something in the chat, which is something that you can search if you're interested in UMass Amherst Campus Pulse. And that's a great, I'll just mute that person. If you check out UMass Amherst Campus Pulse, you can see a full list of our organizations, and oftentimes if you click on them, you can see a little description or even go to their website. And then the last thing I want to highlight is just our ranking as #24 public university in the United States. We are a top public research institution. That's something that we're very proud of, and a lot of different factors go into that, but it's pretty cool knowing that right in your backyard you have a top 30 public. So we're very fortunate in that respect. So while we're talking about UMass, I want to ask Megan some questions about her experience, and I'll start with, you know, another question that our tour guides tend to love, which is, what is your favorite thing to eat at UMass dining?
Yeah, definitely. As you can see from my enthusiasm, the food truly is awesome. You know, one of those things that people say to you when you're going to college is like, oh, like, you know, I bet you can't wait for a home cooked meal. And it's like, no, I'm actually pretty sad when I have to go home because I can't go to the dining halls. But my favorite meal, I would have to say, I have to say 2 things. One is we have an awesome tradition that on Halloween night, every student who can swipe into the dining halls gets a steak and lobster dinner. So that's pretty cool. It's a great tradition that we have. And then my favorite kind of like day-to-day meal that I like to eat is we have amazing stir fry in all of the different dining halls. So my favorite is at Franklin Dining Hall, but they're honestly all the same. And I'm also gluten-free. So, you know, at a lot of places that might pose as an issue, but at UMass, you know, we have all the different allergens listed on these little labels in front of everything that they possibly have. Like if it's a carrot, it's still labeled as like no allergens except for carrots, you know. So yeah, so my favorite would have to be the stir fry that I can get everywhere, and then the Halloween tradition.
Yes, I love the steak and lobster, and I usually go with my fiance, and he does lobsters, but then I get his lobster ticket, and it works out great for everyone.
I do that too.
Yeah. So, Megan, we were talking a little bit about the size, how, UMass kind of feels like its own little city. A lot of people feel like that can be a little intimidating, or is it overwhelming to be at a campus of our size? And we always like to say that UMass does a good job of making a big school feel smaller. Would you be able to talk about some ways that UMass does that in your experience?
Yeah, definitely. So I don't want to sound like a broken record. I'm sure that everyone's going to tell you this when you enter college as a freshman, but seriously, get involved. There's so many different things to get involved in, not only your freshman year, but I've been joining things every year since. So even this year, I'm going to be a teaching assistant, which is something new to me that I've never done. But yeah, we like to say that you can make a big school feel small, but you can't make a small school feel bigger. So, with that, the best way to kind of just like get yourself acclimated is to find your niche, find your people, find your things that you like to do. Trust me, they're out there at UMass. And then it's just really great, all the different groups that you can join, and, just keep meeting people that way. I am a tour guide, obviously, biased, but it's the best job on campus. There's also a ton of other jobs that you can do, such as tutoring, or we have a whole bunch of student-run businesses, such as like a bike co-op, or some eateries like Sweets and More, which has really good milkshakes and like other ice cream and nachos and late night food. So there's that way to get involved. There's also, like you can see there, the over 300 registered student organizations. So just our glorified name for clubs, like Jules talking about a little bit. And, that ranges from sports to cultural, like she was saying. So there's tons of different ways to get involved there. And then also, just going out to weekend events that we have, or like sporting events, get to meet people through your floors. Especially as a freshman, you have the opportunity to join a residential academic program, which we call RAPS, where you live in the same floor as students that you're taking one class with. So that can range from like a business wrap to a current events wrap. So there's just tons of ways to get involved. So just take advantage of that. And I'm telling you, when you're walking across campus, it will not feel that big.
Yeah, it's really surprising how quickly it just starts to feel comfortable, and that you actually tend to see a lot of the same people, in your daily circles, I think. That was my experience. And I came from a really small high school. I actually went to the smallest public high school in Massachusetts, and I graduated with 34 students. So I can always assure people that if I can do it and come to UMass Amherst and not be overwhelmed, then anyone can do it. So before we move on to the next slide, I just want to ask one more question, talking about kind of campus life and your experience. What is one of your favorite things to do on campus, and one of your favorite things to do off campus?
Yeah, great question. So off campus, I love hiking. I love the outdoors. So one of my favorite parts of being in Amherst is all the different mountain ranges that are out there, the ton of different trails. There's like a bike trail that goes over the river, and there's a whole bunch of mountain ranges like Mount Holyoke, Mount Tom, Skinner State Park. So I just love that, you can really get outdoors. That being said, there's also a whole bunch of shopping and eatery. Northampton is close by, and that has really cool stores, like a really old record shop and cool bookstores and clothes. So I think the general area itself is awesome, but I just love hiking off campus. On campus, that's hard because there's so much. I love my job, honestly. I love the people that I see every day. I really look forward to it. But I also love, going to sporting events, especially our hockey team is really good. So it's super fun to go to their games at night. They were ranked they've been like top 1 or 2 ever since my sophomore year. So they actually went all the way to the Frozen Four tournament in, I think it was my sophomore year. And we actually got a whole bunch of buses, and we all went out to TD Garden to watch. So it's really fun to go watch sporting events, definitely. And that's definitely one of my top.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So we're going to jump back into talking a little bit more about the admissions process in general, and give you some info about what to expect. I also want to acknowledge that I think there will still be changes possibly coming to, how we need to be flexible with admissions going into the next year, given everything that's going on right now with the pandemic. I know that As of right now, UMass Amherst is still requiring standardized testing, but stay tuned, because the College Board has just come out with some information about how they're not going to be offering that home testing, and we know that there are certain areas of the country where there aren't going to be test centers available. Others, there are, but there may not be capacity. So just stay tuned and take this information kind of like with a grain of salt, knowing that this is what we're going to talk about now is the regular admissions process. And if there are changes to that process, or if you need us to be flexible as we go into the year, just communicate with us and communicate, Mr. Lebenson and the team at Brookline High School will be communicating with us as well. So just, again, take this kind of with a grain of salt. The first thing that I want to talk about is the schools and colleges. So as I mentioned, all of our 100 plus majors are divided into these 10 schools and colleges that you see here on the screen. And again, this is not like they're all separate and you can only take classes in one and you never see anyone in the other schools and colleges. It's just a way of organizing. And the reason why it's relevant to you at this point in the process is because you will need to choose at least a school or college, if not a specific major, when you apply into UMass Amherst. So you are going to be applying using the common application online. That's the only option to apply to UMass Amherst. And you'll have to choose a first choice major and a second choice major. So just to clarify, you're only going to be admitted to one major, either your first or your second choice. When you receive your acceptance letter, it will tell you what major you were admitted to. And the reason why you choose a first and second is because some of our programs are more competitive or selective. So while you might be admissible to the university as a whole, you might not be admissible to one of the competitive programs. And that's why we would ask you to choose a second choice, so you kind of have that backup option. So of the schools and colleges that you see listed here, 4 of them are considered competitive or selective and are going to be more difficult to be admitted into. The most selective is our College of Nursing. The reason why nursing is so selective, besides the fact that it's a great program, is because of its very small size. We limit the nursing school to 64 freshmen each year. And that's because we have 64 clinical partners in the area where you would do your clinicals. So we need to keep it quite small. And that means there's a lot of competition for those 64 spots. For that reason, the College of Nursing is also the only major that you can't transfer into later. So you do need to be directly admitted into the nursing program in order to be able to major in nursing at UMass Amherst. There are a lot of other great health-related fields, but the nursing degree in particular is very selective. The other 3 competitive programs are the College of Information and Computer Sciences, the College of Engineering, and the Eisenberg School of Management, which is our business school. So each of those have several majors within them. Actually, Information and Computer Sciences just has those 2. Informatics and computer science, but there's several different engineering paths and many different majors within the School of Management. So you could either, select a major, or you could apply just to the general school. And this goes for all of them, all of these different schools. And then, let's say that you put your first choice as Hospitality and Tourism Management, which is in the Eisenberg School of Management. And then you put your second choice as Communications. And then you weren't admitted directly into the Eisenberg School, but you were admitted to your second choice, Communications. You could try again to be admitted to Eisenberg later after enrolling at UMass in another degree program, but it wouldn't be a guarantee. And I know I'm giving a lot of info and it's a little bit complex, so please don't feel like that you need to, this is your only chance to hear it and you better remember what I say right now. This is just to kind of lay the groundwork for what to expect. We'll work with you, your school counselors will work with you when you're choosing a major. But the reason that I really want to emphasize this is because every school that you're going to be applying to is a little bit different in terms of how the major choice plays in to the decision process. And for us, the major that you choose does have a pretty significant impact on how we review your application and on the likelihood of being admitted. So it's something that you want to think pretty carefully about. And then think about choosing a second choice major that's not a competitive major, right? So if you're applying to your first choice as mechanical engineering, it would not be a good idea to put electrical engineering as your second choice major, because if you weren't admissible to one competitive program, odds are you wouldn't be admissible to the other one either. So you might want to do a backup like an exploratory track in natural sciences or math. And you can choose an exploratory track, which is sort of our version of undecided. But again, it would need to be within one of these schools or colleges. Because there are so many options, we do want everyone to have what we call an academic home base by choosing one of these schools or colleges to apply to. Feel free to ask any questions at this point that you might have about majors or schools and colleges in the chat. I see one right now, which is a great one. What if you want to double major in 2 different schools? That is absolutely possible. Obviously, if you're majoring in nursing, you would have to start in nursing. You couldn't add it on later. I think it's pretty unusual for that to be the case, that someone would double major in nursing, because nursing is such an intensive program, but I just wanted to point that out. You cannot add nursing later. But yes, you could do a double major, for example, in political science and then business. Those are in 2 different schools and colleges. You would simply want to start in one. So you can't come in as a double major. You come in under one major and then add the second one with the help of an advisor once you're already here at UMass. And then of course you do have the option to think about whether a build your own major might be appropriate as well if you want to combine things from different areas. So that is definitely possible. You could also do a major in one school or college and a minor in another. So you're certainly not limited just to that one school or college. Again, if you have any other questions about that, pop them in the chat and hopefully I can get to them. But I'm going to move on to the next slide and talk a little bit about the application timeline. Again, we know things are really funky right now with COVID-19, but this is our plan, and this is the typical admissions timeline, where you would have these 2 options of when to apply: early action or regular decision. At UMass Amherst, we don't offer a binding admissions option such as early decision that you may see at some other schools. We just have early action and regular decision, and you have the same chance of being admitted no matter when you apply. So we don't give a preference to our early action applicants. We don't have different academic standards, whether you apply early action or regular decision. Really, the only difference, practically speaking, is the timing and when you hear. So for early action, again, the deadline, as you can see there, is November 5th. We typically will be releasing early action decisions in December and January. And then the regular decision deadline is January 15th. And we typically release those decisions in February and March. And then no matter when you hear from us, you still have until the national decision date, which is typically May 1st, to let us know if you'd like to enroll. So if you apply early, you just find out earlier and have more time to compare all your different offers and financial aid packages. The main thing to keep in mind if you're applying early action is that typically we won't have your first quarter senior or first marking period senior year grades yet. So we'd be making the decision just based on your freshman, sophomore, and junior year classes and grades, because it's still so early in your senior year. So I know that classes have been interrupted and we've had to shift to online learning, and every school's a little bit different in terms of how they're operating with online learning and grading. And so you may feel like normally you would have applied early, but now you'd like to wait to have first semester senior year done. Hopefully, knock on wood, things be back to some semi-normalcy in the fall. So it's up to you. It completely is up to you. We're happy to have one-on-one conversations about what would be the best option, but just keep in mind those are the 2 options typically, is the early action, regular decision. We also want to recommend that you submit a FAFSA if you are eligible for federal aid, and that is a free application. It's right in the name, free application for federal student aid. So we do recommend that students fill that out to see if they're eligible for some federal grants or loans. And then we'll also automatically consider everybody for merit aid, which is based on your academic profile and your application file. So you don't have to apply for merit aid at UMass Amherst. Again, you're automatically considered, but our merit aid is fairly limited. Most of our financial aid comes from the FAFSA, from our need-based aid. So we recommend that you complete that. You would need to complete that by March 1st. Once it's done, if your FAFSA is done and you hear from us that you were accepted, you would then get your financial aid package about 10 to 14 days later. As you can see here, receive financial aid award, and then let us know by May 1st if you'd like to enroll. So I'm just going to pause. I see there's some questions in the chat, which are really good questions about academics, and we will come back to them after I finish up talking about applications. So thank you for sending those. So we've already been talking a little bit about financial aid. I just want to give a very clear sense of what you can expect of the cost. As an in-state student, most of you guys do have that advantage of paying the in-state tuition and fees, which are $20,000 less than for out-of-state students, and you're looking at a quote-unquote sticker price of around $30,000. Sticker price meaning that's before any kind of financial aid. This includes almost everything other than what we recommend for like books and transportation, which is typically around maybe $1,200 a year, depending on the student. But for the most part, I mean, this is going to include your technology fee, your activities fee, your living on campus, your average meal plan, and you're looking at a sticker price that's about half of what you might see at another school that's out of state or a private school. So that's really valuable when you think about the return on investment that you're going to be getting for your tuition dollars for education at a really strong school like UMass Amherst. And then as you can see here, we do offer scholarships and grants, neither of which you have to pay back. We will work with you on loans, which of course do need to be paid back eventually, usually with interest. And then we offer work study as well, which means that you'd be guaranteed a certain number of hours at an on-campus job. Students can absolutely get jobs on campus or off campus, whether they have federally mandated work study or not. It's lots of opportunities to work while you're a UMass Amherst student. Megan's an example of that. I'm another. I worked all through my time at UMass. There was a question in the chat, do you need to fill out the FAFSA to be considered for merit scholarships? No, you do not. Everyone's automatically considered. It really has nothing to do with your finances or your family's income at all. It's purely based on your application. But as I said, they are fairly limited, usually just to a couple $1,000s, which is great to have when you're thinking about $30,000 a year. We want to be looking to need-based aid. All right. So what are you going to need to submit? As I already mentioned, we do use the Common App. I'm not going to go into detail on all these different parts because there'll be plenty of chance to do that as you're filling out the application. You're going to get great advice from your school counselors, and we can always have a one-on-one chat. I want to keep this kind of like specific to what's different about UMass as compared to any other Common App school. So there are going to be 2 optional UMass questions. Why UMass? So we've already heard a lot of great reasons in this session today why you might want to apply here, and then why these majors. We'll just want to know a little bit more. There's no right or wrong answer to either of those questions. I always advise students that the more information you give us through the application process, the better decision we can make and the more we can really get to know you. So even though they're optional, I do encourage you to fill those out. In terms of what we require, as I mentioned, as of this moment, June 11th, we still require the SAT or ACT. Stay tuned. Many schools are realizing that they need to go test optional for the fall. And then in terms of the letter of recommendation, we only require 1. It does have to be from an academic source, so typically a college counselor or a teacher. And then if you'd like to supplement them with additional teacher recommendations or an outside recommendation, such as from a mentor or a boss or a coach, that's totally fine as well. So again, lots of information here that I'd be happy to go into more depth on if you have questions, but just keep in mind that what we do is called a holistic review. What that means is that we look at all of the things on this page, as well as things like your school profile and the rigor of the classes that you took. And we really just try to get to know you and create a context to accurately understand what your grades and possibly your test scores say about you as a potential UMass student. Because ultimately what we really want to do is bring in students that are going to be successful and be a great fit for UMass Amherst. And so that's what we're trying to figure out. It's not that we're here to put up a wall and decide if you're good enough to go to UMass. We want to make decisions that are going to be best for everybody, mainly for you, to bring you into a university that's going to be a great fit for you, where you can really thrive and succeed. So please use me as a resource going through the application process. No question is too big or too small. I'm always happy to talk. And I think we're going to go into the Q&A. I do want to start with some of the questions that already came in the chat, and this is a great one that I'm going to ask Megan to talk about. How are classes taught? Is it purely lecture, or are there some discussion-based classes as well?
Yeah, great question. So again, one of the things of going to a larger university is you're like, oh my gosh, is there going to be like these large lectures where I'm just like another student sitting in the crowd? The answer to that is you might have some large lectures that just kind of comes with it, especially with general education classes. But that being said, there's so many different ones that doesn't necessarily mean that you will be in a larger lecture. But that being said, is that if you are in a lecture, no matter how big, there's always a discussion section. So this means that you'll probably have lecture like twice a week. And then on the third day of the week, you'll have a teaching assistant, like I mentioned, I work as, that will lead a discussion-based class once a week. So this will be like 20 to 30 students from your class, and the teaching assistant will just kind of reinforce what was taught that week and not teaching anything new. So you don't have to worry about like, this teaching assistant taught this while like mine didn't. That's not an issue. They always have some sort of questions that they ask and that you could discuss in groups, or some sort of worksheet, something of that sense to make sure that you guys are doing well, kind of keeping up. If you have any questions that you don't really want to ask in lecture, but you want to ask in discussion, that's a really great place for that as well. And it's also a really nice place to kind of get other students like phone numbers and stuff if you want to do homework with them. So those are great. Another way if you have lectures is you'll have an iClicker in most of them. So this is kind of like a remote that you turn into like the frequency of the room. And the professor will have a question like listed on the board, and you'll use the remote to click the answer that you think it is. So this is a great way to engage in the lecture. That way, if everyone is choosing C and the answer is A, the professor knows, all right, like, let me back up. Let's go over that again. So that's a really great tool as well. But, like I said, you will not only be in lectures in your 4 years at all. It's mostly just those general education ones that will be lecture-based. From then on, our average class size is actually 36 students. So I've been in classes with like 8 people. So it really kind of depends, especially as we like to kind of describe academics in a pyramid. So if you can imagine, like the bottom is the biggest chunk, that's your general education classes. Then it's your college requirements, that's the middle chunk. So they're kind of like your gen eds for your major almost. And then the top tier is your major ones. So those are going to be your smallest, the ones where you're most engaged with the professor. It's a great place to kind of get to know your professors, to ask for research opportunities or letters of rec for jobs and stuff like that when the time comes. So it definitely varies for sure, but there's ways to make your classes more personalized to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan. Yeah, the average class size was something someone asked, so thank you for touching on that. And I also think it's helpful to know that 80% of our classes are 40 students or under. So the majority of the classes that you take are going to be those smaller discussion classes, and then sprinkled in with some of the larger lecture style classes. One question that we had that I can answer is there an arts department at UMass Amherst, and can you major in it? Yes. The larger college would be the College of Humanities and Fine Arts, and then within that, we have 2 different kinds of art majors. You could be a BFA, a Bachelor's in Fine Arts, which is very focused on creating art, or a BA, which is a Bachelor of Art in art, which is a little bit more general, though there is definitely an art making aspect to it. We also have a Bachelor of Fine Arts. Actually, I'm not sure if it's a BA or a BFA in art history. We have bachelor's degrees in music and in dance and theater. So there are a lot of different kinds of art you can major in and take classes in. And then even within art, you can focus on ceramics. I know is one, photography, digital media, so painting. There are different options even within the studio art programs. And I'm just going to back up a little bit to see some of the questions. I know I had asked Mr. Lebenson to manage the chat, but a lot of them are coming into me privately, which is totally fine. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue to fill questions. And Mr. Lebenson will pause in a few minutes and see if there are some that have come into you directly. So thank you for continuing to put questions in. One question in terms of like admissions is, do you focus more on grades for junior and senior year? So we definitely feel that your upper level grades in your junior and senior year are going to be the better indicators of how you would be as a college student at UMass. So generally we value when we see like an upward trend. If the grades haven't been completely steady, we'd like to see them moving in a positive direction. Sometimes there's dips and there may be a class that you struggle in, and that's totally okay. But in general, we do like to see that upward trend or consistent grades. And so yes, the junior and senior grades are going to be, generally speaking, more helpful in helping us think about, will you be successful at UMass? That being said, of course, I think most of the people, if not all on the call, are current juniors, or you're finishing up your junior year. And obviously your junior year has kind of been smashed into smithereens by COVID-19. So we get that, and that just means that we're going to have to do an even more holistic review, relying more so on letters of recommendation and in conversations with your school counselors about what learning was like at Brookline High School during COVID-19. Again, maybe you'll want to have those senior year grades and choose to apply regular decision. But then again, we don't all really know what the fall is going to look like either. So maybe we'll have to be looking more to sophomore year or start of junior year grades. And for some students, I know that can be a little bit scary because maybe you had more of that upward trend and you were hoping to show that continued growth in the end of your junior year, and now don't really have the opportunity to. And we get that. And just remember that every student is experiencing the same challenges, maybe, and they're affecting them in different ways, but there's no mythical student out there who wasn't affected by COVID-19. Everybody was. Everybody's transcripts are messed up, everybody's extracurriculars are messed up, and our lives are a little messed up too. So we get it, and we're just going to have to work closely together to really get that understanding. So it really, again, just to go back to what I said before, like the more info that you give us, the better. So if you were like, my grades were really good, but then, this happened or whatever, just like tell us and have a conversation with us, and we'll work with you. And that's where your counselors and teachers will advocate for you as well. So looking through some questions here. How is the academic support at UMass Amherst? First of all, I'll start with my perspective and then open it up for Megan to add to. Every single student at UMass Amherst has an academic advisor that's assigned through your area of study, so from your school or college. That is a great resource. There are also additional resources like our Writing Center and the Learning Resource Commons at our library. And then if you're in a program like a pre-med track or in the honors college, you'll have additional advising on top of that. So Megan, can you share a little bit about academic support from your perspective?
Yeah, so like you kind of touched upon, you'll have your academic advisor, and then plus you'll have advising for pretty much anything else that you're doing. So for example, I have an advisor for my major. I have career advisors. I have honors advisors. I had study abroad advisors. I had a minor advisor. Like, it's seriously, there's someone to help you everywhere along the way. Before you sign up for your classes, you will meet with your advisor, or you have the opportunity to just be like, hey, am I on track? Is this good? Will I graduate in 4 years? They'll kind of guide you through all that. You also have like personal advisors. So for example, as a freshman, you'll have, I don't remember if I mentioned this or not, but you'll have a residential assistant, an RA that lives on your floor. And that's kind of like a big brother, big sister on campus. So that's another kind of person to advise you. You also have a peer mentor your freshman year in your dorm. So it's kind of like a live-in tutor, except, they obviously don't know everything about your kinesiology class that you're taking, but, they give you good study tips. They help you figure out what gen eds you want to take, and stuff like that. So there's not only like professional advising, but there's also students that are always there to help you as well.
And can you talk a little bit about like mental health support on campus as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like in the beginning, you mentioned those resources that are always there for help as well. But we also have the CCPH, which is the Center for Counseling and Psychological Health, I think, and you get 3 free therapy sessions. It's always a tongue twister. It's really hard for me to get out, but you get 3 sessions totally free anytime you need them throughout the year. So, if you're just having a really tough time with something at home, or if you're having, a hard time keeping up with your work and it's stressing you out, or an issue with a friend, that resource is there to help you, in addition to all those other specific resources that we mentioned in the beginning. So there's tons of resources. There's also the Center for Women in Community and for Men and Masculinity. So there's hotlines for that. All these numbers get plugged immediately into your phone once you get to school. So if you're having any issue at all, help is always there.
Yeah, and then from those three, you're right, it is a tongue twister. From those 3 free sessions, they'll connect you to, a professional counselor if you want to continue with that, and help you find someone that you can see on a regular basis that takes your insurance. So you have all the kind of like informal resources, and then they can connect you, to continue to work with mental health professionals as well. Yes. And that's a really great question. So there are a couple more, but I want to jump to one that I think is really valuable to speak about right now, since we have someone in CHC, Commonwealth Honors College, with us, which is how do you apply for the honors program? Is it available for every major? So I'll ask you, Megan, first to talk about like what is the Honors College program, and then I'll talk about it from an admissions standpoint as like how can you be part of it?
Yeah, so in the Honors College, it's not its own college like you saw on that side of like College of Nursing or College of Humanities and Fine Arts, but instead it's an umbrella program that anyone in any major can be a part of. So, you know, it's not necessarily anything that's better than anything else or anything like that. It's just kind of a supplemental. We like to say like the cherry on top of your UMass experience or your UMass education. If you want to do it, it's there. If you don't, then like, you know, that's fine too. What it entails is you'll take a couple of your gen eds as honors. So it's just a smaller class, essentially, and a little bit of extra advising. You'll take a couple of your major classes as honors. And then as a senior, kind of like the big part of it is you have a capstone thesis or project. So you work with a professor in either a seminar type of class, or if you have your own idea, that's totally awesome too. You just need a sponsor, a faculty sponsor for that. And it's just a great way to kind of wrap up your education. You know, you don't have to be in the Honors College in order to write a thesis, but it is just kind of a cool thing, kind of a cool perk. I had a couple seminars that I took as honors as well. And then from them, I actually joined a project called Board Librarians, which we send educational resources to schools in Malawi where they don't have any Wi-Fi. So we kind of like supply it for them. And that was a project that I learned from an honors professor. So again, it's just a kind of a smaller way to make your experience smaller, like we were talking about, and to kind of meet more people.
Awesome, thank you. And in terms of how you can be part of this, everybody who applies to UMass Amherst as an incoming first-year student is automatically considered for an invitation to the honors program, just like with merit aid. You don't have to do anything extra. You don't have to fill out an application or check a box. When we read your application, we consider you for a spot in honors. For incoming first-year students, the honors invitations are very selective, so it's only around 10 or 11% of our incoming first-year students that are typically invited into the Honors College. And the reason being is simply that we want to, for most students, it's more appropriate to like kind of have their first year of college under their belt before they go about adding extra academic challenge and kind of extra academic work on top of that. But for a select few students that really stand out to us in the admissions process, we will invite them to start in their first year. And we are looking for strong academics that are typically like at or above our average academic profile, as well as students that are well-rounded. You know, it's kind of all the cliches, leadership, service, great recommendations, but it's not one of those things where I can say, oh, we only take the top 10% of our applicants on GPA, or if you check off this box, and this box, you'll be in honors. It is very subjective, and it's up to kind of the reader, like myself, to choose their top 10%, and that allows us to really, you know, advocate for students that stand out to us through the process. You can imagine as we continue to read thousands of applications, there are a lot who are really strong that are like absolutely no doubt they're getting in, and then sometimes there's like that shining star that kind of was like, wow. And those are typically the students that we invite to the Honors College in their first year. But that being said, most of the students in the Commonwealth Honors College actually start the program in their sophomore year by applying in as freshmen. So 90% of freshman students who apply to the Honors College get in. So the odds are really good that anyone who wants to be part of the Commonwealth Honors College will be able to pursue that program. It's just a question of whether you'd be invited to start it in your first year or whether you'd apply in and start it in your second year. So we have a couple more questions and we're almost at 4. I think I can probably answer all the rest that have come in, and I would just ask for no one else to send in questions because you can email them to me after if we don't get to them today. So, yeah. So I'm gonna back up to make sure that we get everything. I like this question, it's a fun one. How is the music scene at UMass Amherst? So I can give you some like info about kind of performing groups and stuff like that, and then I'll give it to Megan for like just in general, as you know, as a student. So like if you're interested in getting involved with music and not necessarily at an academic level, like maybe you don't plan to do a major or minor, but you want to play, you have an instrument, there are a lot of ways to do that. Of course, most people know we have an awesome marching band. We also have things like our orchestra, our string ensemble, jazz groups, all kinds of different ways that you can be involved. The person in the music department who works with us in admissions will always say, like, don't leave your instrument at home, because there's opportunities to keep on playing, whether it's formally or informally. So you definitely don't have to be like an official music major or minor to perform at UMass. And then we also have like spring concerts and stuff. So Megan, like just from a student perspective, what would you say the music scene is like?
Yeah, I'm always amazed at what people can produce in music, because I'm not very musical myself. I'm more of like a sing in the car type of girl. But, there, like Jules is saying, there's tons of different ways to get involved with it. Like she did mention, our marching band is, I think it's like best in the country or something. They performed at the Rose Bowl parade, and they've also performed at Super Bowl halftime, which is really cool. There's also a ton of a cappella groups that you can join, in addition to choirs that you can join. I'm very impressed with I've gone to a few shows before, and it's very impressive what they do. So there's tons of opportunities to get involved with it, and they're really great.
What about, like, can you talk a little about spring concert and stuff like that?
Yeah. So every spring that, the a cappella groups will have their spring concert, jazz groups will have a spring concert, other orchestras, bands, stuff like that. They'll all perform. You'll get emails throughout, not just for those spring concerts or just for music, but you'll get general activity emails that include when all of these things are performing. They come out every Thursday, so it'll let you know that weekend, like what's going on. And most of the time it is free. If you do have to pay for something, it's only like $10 or something. So
yeah, awesome. I meant like the big one, they always have like Future, I think, came, and
yes.
Yeah, we usually have
So,
like one big name or a couple big name like headliner artists like come, and it's completely free, like at the Mullen
so
Center.
that is So in the Mullen Center, which is where our hockey and basketball teams play, it's a big stadium. And we also have concerts every year. So we've had Khalid come in the past. We've had Cardi B. We've had Chris Young and Eli Young Band. We had the Battle of the Shawns, which was like I think it was Shawn Mendes and Sean Kingston or something like that. So really, really cool names come. And like Jill said, they are free. And I think, sometimes there are ones that are like $15, but
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thanks. And then I like this question too. What do you mean when you say the courses taken at the other colleges through the consortium are free? Just that, girl. They are free. Like, you literally don't have to pay anything extra. You don't have to pay per credit. It's just included as a UMass student. You would sign up through a different process than you'd sign up, for a regular UMass class on campus. But there's no extra fee. It's just you would take the bus over there, sit in class with the girls from Mount Holyoke, and take a class. So that's a great option. Completely free for our students, up to 2 classes a semester. A couple more questions. What are the gen ed requirements? So I'm not going to go into detail with these, just because I would say the website would be the most helpful, because they'll lay them out. And I can certainly, send you that link if you want to shoot me an email. But even if you just Google UMass Amherst general education requirements, they will come right up. Like Megan said, it's sort of like a triangle where you have the university gen eds, then you have your college requirements, and then you have your major requirements on the top. How do you recalculate GPAs? So it says Brookline High School is unweighted. So we do add weight for honors, AP level classes, as well as dual enrollment classes. So if you have taken a class at the honors level, a 0.5 is added to your grade for that class. So quick example, you get a B in a class, that's a 3.0, and then the honors level class would become a 3.5. If it's an AP or dual enrollment class, it's a full point added to the GPA. So that 3.0 would become a 4.0, which is an A. So if you are taking some higher level classes, that can help boost your GPA. Again, I know that some of that may be impacted by COVID-19. It's okay, we understand, but you may have a bit of a boost compared to the unweighted GPA that you see, on your report card from Brookline High. Are business students also able to double major even outside of the business school? Absolutely, yes. And let's see, I think that's everyone's question. Oh, one more. Does their room and board payment include 3 meals a day? So I know that includes our standard meal plan. I'm just not sure if that's 2 or 3 swipes a day. Do you know, Megan?
Yeah, so there's a ton of different meal plans that you can have. They range, I think it's like 5 total. They range from unlimited meal swipes and like $250 dining dollars, which are like basically debit you can use at different eateries. Or you can do a certain amount of swipes and a certain amount of dining dollars, so you can choose it. But it is not included in room and board, I don't believe.
No, it is. It is.
Oh, it is.
I just don't know if it's like which plan. Yeah, I just don't
Yeah.
know which plan it is, like of the 5 that you can choose. So that's a good question. I think it was Connor that sent that in. I'm not sure. Shoot me an email and I'll find out and let you know. So that covers all the questions, big and small. Thank you guys so much for the questions, for the time. Mr. Lebenson for having us, and Megan for joining us and sharing your perspective. I think, we were talking about in our office a little bit, like there's so much, that this pandemic has like made it more difficult to do. But one thing that's been a plus is being able to have students, in these conversations where we normally wouldn't. It would just be me, and having Megan just adds a whole nother layer, and she can answer some things that I can't. So thank you so much for joining us today.
For having me.
Awesome. So I will, before I head out, I'm going to do 2 things. One, I'm going to put my email in the chat just one more time, so it's like at the bottom and everyone can easily access it. And then I'm going to make Mr. Lebenson the host, and I know you guys are going to stay on and continue the conversation. So thank you again. Please reach out. I know some of you weren't able to register for the session. If you want to shoot me an email and let me know you were here, I'll add it to your admissions file. So, all right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jules and Megan. That was great, really informative, and I always am amazed how many applications we have from Brookline High. We usually have last 2 years, this year and the year before, we had 275 applications, and this year actually I just looked, 162 kids got in and 36 are attending. So thank you for taking our kids. We really appreciate it.
All right. Have a good afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.
And I'll take over from, thank you. I'll take over from here, and if you do have time to stay, we'll do a short presentation for the juniors and their parents about some of the information from the guidance department. I'm happy to introduce myself. So I'm the college counsel at BHS. And then we have Darby Nefier here, who is the department chair, and I see a bunch of counselors: Nicole Bent, Kathy, Whelan, Ellen Hurst, and Eric Schiff. I don't know if I miss anybody because we have quite a number of people. I'm gonna share my screen. Before I do that, I'd like to note that if you have any questions, please write them in the chat, and I will read them out loud. So let me share my screen, and I have a shorter presentation here. Okay, so start the presentation. Darby, can you see my presentation?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So this is the summer update for juniors, and I know a lot of you have lots of questions, so we'll try our best to answer them and go from here. But you should know that we are on top of all the information coming from colleges. We get a lot of emails, and we're constantly reading them and updating them, and all the counselors staying on top of it. So I'm gonna go next slide. I just wanted to reiterate, this is the grading policy for Brookline High School that went to our students and their parents from our principal, Anthony, from our headmaster, Anthony, head of school, Anthony Meyer. I just wanted to make sure everybody understands it, because I know a lot of kids kind of still have questions about it. And so we have 2 semesters this year, and the first semester has terms quarters 1 and 2, and the second semester is everything after we went on a quarantine. So if you get A, B, or C for semester 1 and a pass for semester 2, then your letter grade will be based on the average of quarters 1 and 2 and work from 130 during the quarantine if it helps the final grade. And then there's a second scenario where if your grades are A, B, C, and D, and then you fail second semester, and then there's a teacher's discretion to determine pass for the year to send it to review for the student's dean and the program coordinator. So they'll be deciding what would be the final grade. So again, my recommendation, and obviously it's makes total sense, is to try to pass the second semester, but we all know it is a difficult time for everybody. So that's why we have this provision where if you did well semester 1, failed second semester, then your dean and program coordinator and will have a way of deciding maybe you can pass the class anyway.
I would just reemphasize that it's important that the student, any student who has had specific circumstances that have impacted us during the quarantine semester, needs to be sure that they're communicating with their counselor and dean. The parents should not be doing that necessarily, but parents can certainly do that. But certainly a student and parent should not be going to the teacher and pleading for some kind of unusual grading. They really need to be going to the counselor and dean. And then that determination is not made by one sole person, but it's by a group of the staff. So we're not going to be really changing the policy other than what you're seeing here. The only unusual nature is if a student has passed first quarter or is struggling for first semester and then not passed second semester, where we're going to have different issues to deal with and talk about.
All right, so and then so I'll move along. I'll post this whole presentation and the video on the website, and you feel free to ask me questions as we go through.
There's a question already, Lenny, on the grading.
I don't see it for some reason. I'm sorry, go ahead. I don't see it on my, oh,
okay.
I got it. It's on the chat.
Yeah.
Just 1 second. So the question is, if we do get a P or an I for the final grade, how bad does that look? So it's a great question. If you do have a pass on your final grade, it in this year it will look absolutely, I feel like, normal for colleges. There's a lot of high schools around the country that are moving to the pass-fail system. And they are, I would say, expecting to see some grades that are pass-fail. The one thing, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Lenny, sorry.
No, I was just, even, I was on the webinar, was the NCAA, which is the sports agency that certifies students to play in college. And even they expect a lot of grades of P pass on the transcript, and they'll certify it as if it is a full credit.
I was just going to add that there are some even local area high schools that are only offering students pass-fail grades for their final grade for the year. So if students end up with a pass for their final grade on their transcript, that's not going to be seen as hugely unusual. If a student gets an I, an incomplete, I would say that that is something that they need to be. An incomplete means you have work to do to finish out that course. You will not be getting credit if you get an incomplete. So an incomplete means you need to be working with the teacher to sort out what you need to do and what the timeline is to get that extra work done, to make up or get that makeup work done to be able to get a final grade. You do not want an incomplete on your final transcript.
And then I'll move along. So this is the testing. I took the slide from the summit presentation, so I just really like it. I know a lot of people were obviously concerned about all the tests that have been canceled. The June ACT has been canceled already. The July is supposed to go, but I have my doubts about it. Unfortunately, we have to wait for the ACT or College Board to officially announce that it's canceled. We can kind of predict it. But I know I'm hopeful that the rest of the testing will go as planned. As you can see, the SAT, which is the College Board, added a test for every single month going forward, so April, September, October, November, and December. And the only date where is different is September. You cannot take subject tests during that month. That said, subject tests are becoming more and more obsolete. There are very few colleges that actually require subject tests. So I would recommend signing up for SAT or ACT. I get tons of emails. I'm sure councils get them as well, that the College Board opened the registration and it's already at capacity everywhere around Brookline. Unfortunately, we don't run it at the Brookline High. We can't expand the capacity. It wouldn't be safe. So we ask students to sign to more remote locations if possible. And the same was ACT. So you really have to be flexible this year with it. Continuing with this, again, another slide from Summit. And for if you apply an early decision, your SATs in September, October will be able to reach colleges in time for early decision. And with ACT, it's September as well. So you can see if all the test sites are taken and you're unable to travel to further away from Brookline, there will be a lot of students who might not be able to take tests. So we are seeing more and more colleges asking us, telling us that they're going test optional. And the list is on fairtest.org. And if they keep canceling the SATs and ACTs, I think the majority of colleges will be test optional. As you just heard from UMass Amherst, they're still asking for SATs or ACTs, but they're trying to reassess it and see how many kids can take it. So I would go to fairtest.org, see which which schools are test optional, and then do your best in signing up for the test, and just asking you again to be super flexible.
I would just add that for the most part, we would encourage students to try to take at least one SAT or ACT, even if it's later than your general testing plan was originally going to be. But aiming for, it's going to be hard to find an ACT in July anywhere in the near vicinity, but for an SAT or ACT later in the summer or in the fall, simply because some colleges will use some of those scores, even if they're test optional, they will use some of those scores to look at merit scholarships. So it'll be nice to be able to have those scores. Is it essential? No, but we are encouraging students, to take it at least once. And then Lenny, there was a question about, is there a list of colleges going test optional outside of the US?
It's a great question. I need to look at it. I don't know if Fair Test offers that list, but I was just on the webinar with the British schools, and a lot of the international schools, the system of applying takes place a little later than ours. So what they said is they're going to wait and see how the testing goes, because they just have more time. And students can take December testing, sometimes still apply, and later testing. So I will research that a little bit more. I don't know if Fair Test has that information. So there's a question, should we sign up for a second test session now? And I would say you could sign up for the second test session. The only thing I would caution about is you need to sign up for a session that is sufficiently after the first ones, because I really would like you to see your results and possibly study a little more. You don't need to take October and November, because you can't really improve from October to November. So I would say if you're able to sign up for August and December, that makes a little bit more sense. It looks like, from what I've heard, that the November and December dates now on SAT are quite open and there's seats around us. So I would recommend looking at it. Naviance is our web-based program that I keep talking about, because I send everybody emails through it. And your college process this year and next year will go through Naviance. Please email me or your counselor if you have if you don't know how to log in to Naviance. And I love they have several ways to research colleges. There's Supermatch, College Match, scattergrams. There's a lot of ways to look at colleges and what you need to get into these schools. So please use Naviance. It's a really great program we have. I just wanted to show quickly, this is one of the scattergrams from the Naviance. Probably a lot of you have looked at it before. We have your GPA on the x-axis and your SATs or ACTs. Here it's SATs on the y-axis, and you would be somewhere along this graph. A lot of you as juniors have your GPA in Naviance right now, and that's the GPA based on your sophomore year. So unfortunately, we don't know yet what the GPA is going to look like for next year. We haven't made the decision. The school hasn't made the decision on how GPA will be calculated. But from my experience, most students are either staying with the same GPA as sophomore year or doing a little better. So you can always just approximate. If say you're here at 3.3, you can try to see if would you get into the school if you were a little higher or lower. Again, this student has PSAT results in his or her Naviance, so they can approximate where they are. If you haven't taken the test, you can also do the same, just approximate where you would be. So this graphs, even if you don't have a GPA right now and don't have your test scores, it's still possible to see what you need to get into a particular school.
Lenny, I just wanted to add that it's another college search engine that a lot of students find easy to use. We've certainly emphasized the Naviance college search engines that you already mentioned, but College Board does a good college search kind of process engine called Big Future. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. They don't have the scattergrams, obviously, but it's another way to kind of plug in all of the different priorities and areas of interest around thinking about the college that you may be interested in, and then having these search engines come back out with different names of schools that will help you broaden and really look at researching a larger number of schools at this point in the game.
And one of the students asked, how long does it take to get the SAT results? I honestly have no idea how long it will take now, because I know they probably have the people working from home. I would say it's about anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks usually. So I don't know how long it will take this year, but my guess it will be 2 to 3 weeks. But if it's longer, then don't blame me for this information. All right, so I'm gonna move to the research in colleges part of the presentation. And we know there's a lot of campuses that are closed. Most of them are closed. and a lot of our juniors weren't able to see colleges. So we do recommend looking at the virtual resources. I upload this link that was in my junior letter. It will be also on this presentation and on our website, and I'll upload it on the chat, where you can see all the virtual admission events and tours and information sessions. And then we'll also schedule for the next year, starting in September. Usually we have about 200 colleges coming into Brookline High School and talk to you guys, just like today, the UMass talked to us. They usually come every block. So I'll go ahead and schedule this year for next year, and then depending on how what the model is of school next year, we'll either have them virtually or at the building. So you'll be able to meet with the representative, just like you did today with the UMass. And as you heard, she said she's gonna take the information from you and put it on your admissions folder. So it really means a lot to them that you attended the session, that you read their emails, that you reach out. So even though you can't see the colleges physically, there's still ways to see them virtually. I do like, I was doing this process with my son, who is also a junior, and we looked at the student-produced videos of the college experience. I just love that WPI video. There's a lot of humor. It's not official, but you can really get a sense of what you get at WPI, what kind of food there are, what kind of classes. So I'll leave this link here, and you can also look at it as well, but you can also just do search on YouTube for any college, and it will give you a lot of information and videos from that school. I find it a little bit more helpful than the official video from the college, although some official videos are great as well, but they just everything looks so great in every official video. So when the students are doing it, it's really much more student targeted. And
I just wanted to say, I want to be careful about, I haven't seen any of the student produced, but you also have to be careful if it's not officially sanctioned by the college or university and it's student produced. It could be very one-sided in a negative way because of that group or that single student or that group of students' experience. So I just put it out there of trying to find a middle ground between the official and the unofficial in some ways.
And then this is the latest, one of the consultants created this series where a lot of colleges will come in and talk about their schools over the summer. It's a series of Zoom videos, and you can click on this link and sign up for that session. And again, I'll put the link and the presentation on our website. You'll be able to do it there. And they have a lot of universities. If you want to look, talk to the admissions rep, just like we did today, you'll be able to do it over the summer. And again, we'll have them at BHS during the year. And finally, I was on many Zoom sessions, and a lot of the colleges are talking about hosting the drive-through visits during the summer. That's where you come in the car and go around the school in the car. Although this is not optimal because you won't really see the buildings inside or the students who go there, it still gives you a feel for the school. So I would recommend you looking at the college's website, see if they do the drive-through visits, or just going there in the summer and looking at the buildings. I think I might do that myself as my junior. All right, so switching gears, the Common App is allows you to apply to 700 colleges. That's what our students use to apply to college, commonapp.org. If you have time over the summer, you can fill it out right now. It will roll over. You'll be able to just roll over whatever you did this time to the next year application. They have exactly the same topics for the essay as last year. The essay is 650 words maximum, 250 words minimum. So I think there's 7 topics, but I shared here 3 that are most popular. First one asks about the background or identity or interest that you meaningful. Second is the obstacle, and the most popular topic is to share an essay on the topic of your choice. So basically it asks you to write about anything you like, and that tends to be very, very popular. Now the only difference this coming year is they will have the new 250-word essay asking you to just, if you had a disruption during COVID-19, you can use this space, 250 words, to write about the effects on your health and well-being, safety, family circumstances, future plans, and education. So they really emphasize that this is for students who were really disrupted by the COVID-19. So we all were our lives were disrupted. We all had to learn from home. But if you had something major going on, this is a place to write about. And you can definitely talk to your guidance counselor about this essay as well. But I'm really glad it's there. It's a good opportunity for students who are really impacted to talk about it. All right, so just several more slides of things you can do, things for you to do when you have time. I wrote when you have time because I know some of you are doing a lot right now, and you'll have the whole summer to do it. So, and that is, the first one is to ask 2 teachers for recommendation letters, and this should be teachers who know you best, and preferably from this year, from your junior year, although it can be other teachers. It could be teachers from your sophomore year or freshman year, but they need to know you best. And you can always email your counselor and ask who to ask to help you choosing the teachers. But this is a good time to ask them, especially since summer is coming up. Just one more thing about this slide is we ask you to do only 2 letters of recommendation. The way our system's set up, we cannot control which letters go to colleges. So if you ask more than 2, a lot of colleges only take 2, so we won't be able to navigate which letter goes to college. I've had this happen quite a bit. I mean, usually people listen to us, but just don't ask for more than 2 recommendations because we cannot control what goes where. 2 is the number. The other thing to do when you have time is to complete the self-description form on Naviance. And this is under About Me, My Surveys, Service Not Started self-description form. Again, that's pretty easy to find on Naviance. It's under About Me and Surveys. And this is the form that your counselor needs to uses to write your letter of recommendation. Every counselor at BHS writes a letter of recommendation to every single senior on their caseload. And this really helps us. And the same thing for parents. If there are parents here, or you can ask them, we ask parents to complete the parent brag sheet and send it to the counselor. I included the Google Doc link here. Again, I'll post it on the website so you can see it. And then we ask you to help us complete that form. All right, so this was my presentation. I'm gonna open it up for questions. I'll stop sharing right now. And if you have any questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat. And we'll try to answer them as best as we can.
I'd encourage any other counselors who are listening right now to jump in at any point to help Lenny out.
I really loved that UMass presentation, and the lobster dinner sounds good. I have the first question. So if there's no chance to take SAT yet, and the apply to school still requires subject test, would you take SAT first? Yes, I would take SAT first. Subject tests should definitely come second, especially since there are fewer and fewer schools that ask for them. I mean, of the major schools that I know of are, I would just take SATs first or ACT first, and then go for subject tests. And keep in mind, a lot of this schools would accept ACT instead of the subject tests as well, because they do have a science section.
And I would encourage students who think a college may require subject tests to double check, because most colleges are no longer certainly requiring them. So I would either check on the school's website or actually call the admissions office and check before you put yourself through looking for a test date to do subject tests as well as the SAT.
So SAT or ACT first, and I would even look at subject test if you need it. There's so few schools.
And I'm thinking, if you couldn't take if a student can't take the SAT, they wouldn't be able to take the subject tests first. Right?
Well, the question is if they can sign up for subject test first and then SAT second.
Oh, I see. Like SAT. I gotcha.
Yeah, I think it will work out with the testing. I know that's probably the most anxious thing that brings a lot of anxiety to people, but I think it will work out as we reopen. If you get a pass, there's another question I'm going to read. If you get a pass for the end of the year as your grade, how will your GPA be affected? So again, this is an excellent question. And this is the question that our head of school and the administrators have to decide upon. I know there's been a lot of change in Brookline High School and a lot of things going on right now. We were about to make a decision on that, and then things happen. So there's no decision yet. And as soon as we have it, then we'll know how it affects your GPA. But that said, as you heard UMass representatives saying, they still recalculate the GPA. So it doesn't really matter what's going to be on your transcript from us. It matters more on what are the grades on your transcript and how the colleges will calculate it. So for example, UMass recalculates. So no matter what we send them, they'll recalculate.
I'll just add, as the department head, in talking to other area districts, that some are moving forward to some kind of modified GPA, and there are a number of districts that are not doing a GPA for next year. So we are not in the position at this point to clearly say where Brookline High is headed. I will also just emphasize, whichever direction we go in, and I think the UMass Amherst rep talked about this, and heard it from a lot of other college reps, that they use the phrasing holistic review, which means that your teacher recommendations, your application, your counselor recommendation, your probably grades for first semester senior year are going to have a significant weight. So that's what holistic review, it's the big picture review, in a way that looking at a transcript or looking at GPA, sometimes it's going to be different. So I would just say that people really need to think about gearing up and starting off strong as they enter into their first semester senior year. That's going to be key. And really be thoughtful about who you're asking for teacher recommendations, and making sure you're getting the information that your counselor needs to be able to write a good, solid recommendation sooner rather than later, so we're not scrambling to try to write something at the very end right before your deadline date. So we'll be getting that information to you in the fall about timelines, but I just wanted to put out there that there's going to be different kinds of weighting on some things that may not have had as much priority in the past. And any other counselors, if you have insight, jump in.
And somebody asked the question, when is the self-description form must be submitted? As Darby said, this will be one of the big parts of the council recommendation, will be a big part of your application next year. In general, we take them anytime from now till next December, but
no. My kids know. For my kids that are watching out there, I had a due date of June 1st. So I know there's a lot going on in the world. So just get that to me as soon as you guys can, because I start writing recs like soon. So, okay, sorry. That's me.
Yeah, and I ask students to finish it by the end of June, by the end of the school year, maybe by the end of June, because who knows, maybe I can start writing some this summer.
I'm also hopefully the end of the school year. In a perfect world, that would be when they would be submitted.
And I'll say both the questionnaires to counselors and the brag sheets from parents or guardians, that information is helpful for counselors as well. So nudging your parents and guardians to get those into counselors is a good thing as too.
I have a couple more questions. So another one, if I'm planning to go to an art college, should I ask an arts teacher for a recommendation? I said, I'd say it's a good idea if the teacher knows you well.
It would be, if they require academic teachers, it would be considered a supplemental recommendation, right, Mr. Livingston?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, depending on the art college, there's just so many.
That's true.
Interestingly, this morning there was a conversation with one of the Mass State art colleges, and they said they understand that people are unable to take the classes they would like to take over the summer to improve their portfolio, and even during the year. So they are even going to look at portfolios differently next year, because I know a lot of art schools are looking at portfolio more than they're looking at everything else. And they clearly said that they know students didn't have enough, as much training as in previous years. So everything will be looked at differently. The quick question, how many teachers should we ask for recommendation? As I said, 2 is the maximum that I recommend. And that's what most colleges, a lot of colleges are asking for 1, a lot of colleges are asking for 2. So I would recommend no more than 2. What will your grade be if you get a pass for the year? Just a P? Correct. So if you do get a pass for the year, you'll get a P on your transcript. And we just graduated a senior class. That was great. And a lot of them got a P on their transcript. And it just was a P and 1 credit for the course.
There will be an explanation that we'll be adding to the school profile, and quite possibly even on each student's transcript that we send out from Brookline High to colleges starting next year for all of you. If you are a junior, current junior, that will outline how we did our grading and what our GPA decision will finally be. So we're going to do it the best job we can to make sure that college admissions offices are aware of the decisions and choices that we have made to support students around their education and around grading in the COVID period. So I just want to reinforce that we will do everything we can to support that communication.
And then somebody asked, does it matter which classes you ask, which teachers you ask from which classes? Again, my take is ask the teacher who knows you best. I don't know if anybody wants to add anything else.
I agree.
I agree. My experience has been that students often think they have to ask an English or history or a humanities teacher, and then they have to ask a second teacher, has to be either a math or science teacher. And I feel like that's being a little bit more rigid in the process than students have to be. If you have an excellent relationship and have done a superb job in various aspects of a class that was an elective class or was not one of your major subjects, I think students should feel very comfortable going to those teachers and asking them to do recommendations. And it doesn't have to be a class that you're getting an A in. It could be a class where you're getting a B-, but you worked really, really hard to get that B-. And the teacher knows that, and the teacher knows that you reached out for help and you advocated. That could be the best teacher recommendation that could be written for you, and that's going to be valuable when it comes to admissions.
Another question is, do classes at BHS prepare students to take the SAT subject test, or should students buy prep books, do outside work? Again, I always recommend buying the outside book to see what's on the test and if the class covered everything. And it's especially important this year because we went online this year. So you definitely need to get a book from a library or buy a book and prep for the subject test. But before you take the subject test, make sure the colleges you're applying to need the subject test, because again, very few colleges now are asking for them.
Mm-hmm.
I would also recommend maybe reaching out to the teacher of that particular subject and or the curriculum coordinator and double checking. They're usually pretty aware of what the curriculum that was covered in their class at Brookline High is like compared to the subject test, but totally agree with you, Lenny, that students should be double and triple checking about these subject tests because they are disappearing fast.
Yep.
Another question is, does your guidance counselor's recommendation count as one of your 2 recommendations? And no. So that's a separate recommendation that goes with the transcript. And then in addition, you get the teacher recommendations. I have another question. For students that struggled with online learning but did well prior to that, would you recommend a small college or specific learning environment? I would recommend talking to your counselor because it really depends on your whole time at BHS and the first couple of years and this year. So I would recommend talking to your guidance counselor. I don't know if anybody has anything else to add.
I think it's really student specific, right?
Yeah.
So
student specific.
And I think the guidance counselor would know you best. So it'd be good for us to have a conversation with the student. Right, guys?
Yeah. I'm just glad that Flashy 6'9" is using his house arrest to think about college and applying. So that's good. What did you say? Her name on that is Takashi. He's a rap artist, for those of us who didn't know.
Oh.
Prison.
He's on house arrest currently, but he's thinking about applying to college. So that's always good.
Considering UMass Amherst, it's
a wonderful institution.
Another question is, again, if I took another class this summer, for example, English to Impress colleges, would that be a good idea? You got to talk to your counselor. It's so specific. I would say that the majority of American colleges, want you to do well in our school. They don't really want you to do things outside academically. They want you to concentrate on BHS and do well at BHS. But again, I would talk to your counselor if you have specific ideas. And I don't know, that's just too specific. I would have to say, we're closing on time, but I would have to say from everything I see, this class, I understand you guys are going through a lot, and all of us are, but I think it might be a little easier for you to get into college than previous years, because I think colleges are losing tons of international students. They did this year, and we all saw a lot of people moving off the wait lists a lot more than before for our current seniors. And I think the trend will continue next year, where every college that took 10, 15% international students or more are going to lose those people because they wouldn't want to come to the United States because of the coronavirus. So it will open up more spaces for our students, for American students. So I think, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to offer another reassurance that there was, even for us as counselors, there was some real questions and concerns for the current class that just graduated and is heading off to college about how many students would actually feel comfortable paying the tuition of a 4-year college and may decide to do gap years and ask for a higher number of deferrals for next year's freshman year. And then that number might impact the number of students that could be accepted for the following year, which would be your class. And from our experience at Brookline High, there are some students who made some decisions to not necessarily go to the college that they were accepting to right away. But it has not been a huge number of students. And the reassurance is that we're getting from the colleges is that they're aware of this, and they are really trying to take that into account around not impacting the deferments for this year's graduating class, not impacting the admissions for your class the following year.
I'll quickly interrupt or jump in to say that based on wait lists, there was so much movement that I don't know if it was international students aren't coming or what, but I was surprised at the way the pandemic has impacted colleges, and I was nervous at first, and now I'm much less nervous based on this class.
And there's another question that Darby kind of addressed. A lot of 2020 grads will take gap year, will affect the number of 21. I don't see that many 2020 grads taking gap year right now. And when I'm talking to colleges, they're saying the same thing. It's the same number as before. So I think our seniors are anxious to go to college, and they're gonna, it'll be the same as before. A small number of kids to gap years.
As I said, and we don't have all the data right in front of us at this point, but it doesn't seem like there was a huge jump, a significant jump in current seniors who just graduated deciding to do a gap year. So I don't think then that issue is as big as we were concerned about maybe even a month, 2 months ago.
So I think I'm gonna stop here. It's been almost 2 hours. I think it was great. I'm glad at some point we had over 100 students. I'm really glad to see everybody, and we're here to help you. Send us an email, and we'll work on this together, and it'll be great.
Pass the word along that this was recorded, and we'll be posting the recording of both the UMass admission